Dante, you've been having a chat with Phil Better. He's been talking to you all about his love of podcasting. But you want to move that along into a topic that you're a bit more passionate about. So how would you do that?
Well, I would say to Phil that podcasting is great. I love podcasting, obviously. I have a couple shows. But I would say that one of the most fun topics to podcast about is Batman. And so I would pitch to him maybe a Batman podcast.
Excellent. We might speak later about a Batman podcast. So
All right.
look out for that, people.
Let's get on that.
Let's start the show.
Well, he's got a new guest, time to put him to the test. So hey, what's the topic? We don't know, cause he never does research for this show. His name is Jason, he wants to talk to you about a topic you love or something you do. No two topics are ever the same. That might sound impressive, but they're all pretty lame. A conversation with a conversation with a conversation with.
Hello, you're listening to A Conversation With, the podcast where each week I'm joined by a different guest and we have a conversation on a topic of their choice. So my name is Jason Croxon and this week I'm joined by Dante, and as you have heard, we are going to be talking about Batman. I know that I did miss a week last week, so don't worry everybody, I'm back and I'm recording like a madman. We're going to get a couple of episodes done now and you'll never miss me again. And if you're thinking, hadn't noticed that you didn't put an episode out, great. Okay, good to know. Hello, Dante.
Hi, how are you?
I'm all right. I'm gonna stay positive because I noticed a trend of starting my episodes by saying I'm tired. Really drained. It's been a tough day. And while many of those things may be true, even today, I'm just gonna go with I'm good. I'm good, and I'm happy because I don't pick the topics, so my guests have that privilege. And we've had a Marvel episode, we've had a Valiant episode, never had a DC episode or anything DC adjacent. So having Batman, I'm very happy. I'm happy. It's a topic I know a lot about, and I'm ready to get into this. So I usually ask the questions, don't I? So Dante, who is Batman? There we go.
Well, for those of you who don't know, who must be few and far between, Batman is
I do feel
Bruce Wayne.
If you know how to access a podcast and yet you don't know who Batman is, you are on some strange sort of plane of existence that I am not familiar with.
You are living quite the life. It's like if you know how to access the internet and yet don't know that Darth Vader is Luke's father. That's that kind of a thing. So, but yeah. So obviously, Batman, Bruce Wayne, parents died, became Batman. It's pretty much the basics.
All right. So it can happen to anyone. If your parents have died, there's still hope you can be Batman. That's the lesson we're drawing from this. So why have you picked this topic? Why, I mean, it's just a character. So what influence does Batman have for you, or why is it something that stands out for you, Dante? And if you say that it's 'cause I made you pick this topic, I'll edit that out.
Well, obviously you did. No, I picked it just because, partially because I've been consuming a lot of Batman stuff recently. There was a period where I did a bunch of Spider-Man, and you can kind of see that on the Let's Get Contextual schedule of a lot of Spider-Man. And then recently I've just been reading and watching a bunch of Batman stuff. I've been rewatching the animated series for the first time really since I was a kid. So I binged that in a couple weeks. And I've been reading a few of his runs and just yeah, so I've just been kind of a lot of Batman recently. But also I think he's probably my favorite comic book character or superhero. I know that's kind of cliche because it's Batman, it's everybody. Um, but I think there's a lot of really good stories with him, and a lot of like really good getting to the core of who he is. I just really appreciate those stories. So yeah,
I know how you feel because I think Batman is also my favorite comic book character.
Yeah.
Despite my best efforts for him not to be. Like, there have been a number of times when I've really tried to be like, no, it can't be Batman. I have to have a better, more obscure character or a different character for some reason. And it just never works. Like I was saying to my wife not that long ago, I think we may have even said it on a podcast, and I was like, I really think I should be a Superman guy. Like, he's the light. Why am I in the darkness? I should be, this symbol of hope. That should be the guy I'm looking to. So why am I always a Batman fan? And I feel like there was a character that was there that was gonna maybe be my number one. It's gonna take over from Batman. And then because of DC's tendency to reboot and retcon and restart things, I feel like they sort of destroyed the direction this character was going in. Any guesses who this might be? As a member of the Bat family. So, I didn't go too far away. I'm not mad.
Shoot. Member of the Bat family that was destroyed by Rebirth?
I'm going to say New 52 was where it all went horribly wrong.
Okay. Then shoot. I'm probably either Red Hood or Nightwing, I would guess.
Oh, you're so close.
Is it Red Robin?
It was Red Robin, yeah.
Okay, all right. That was my initial guess, but I'm like, is it really? And I doubted myself. I shouldn't have.
If you read, did you ever read the was it Batman Reborn sort of arc when Bruce Wayne disappeared? Everyone thought he was dead, and Dick Grayson took over as Batman, and Damian became Robin. So like during that period, is when Tim Drake, who was formerly Robin, became Red Robin, and he went traveling around the world looking for evidence that Batman was still alive. Nobody believed him.
Yeah.
And he had like the cowl, and he had the Red Robin costume from the Other Earth, and it was really good. And like, the story was good. And for me, the reason I like Batman, I like the detective side of it. And Tim Drake was a good detective. He was doing and it was so good. And then they just gave him wings and took away all the kind of thing and just made I have hope that maybe we'll see this one return one day, but he's kind of in the ether right now in continuity, but
yeah.
I used to put up when I was teaching English in Italy, and I can't even remember why I did it now, but I would make them list detectives, like famous detectives. I would always put Batman on the list, and then get in, a big debate with everyone, because they were like Sherlock Holmes, Poirot, ones like this, and I'd be like, yeah, they're all on my list as well, but they're all sitting under Batman. He's the world's greatest detective, and
he is though.
Interesting how people who could barely speak the language suddenly had this ability to tell me how wrong I was, but he is.
But yeah, he is though, and I agree with you. I really like Batman detective stories, which is why when there's a Batman story that's not really doesn't really involve him detectiving, it's more just him punching people, I'm kind of like, nah, that's not for me. Like, I feel like if you're going to do Batman right, you have to encompass everything that he is, which is the world's greatest fighter, but also is the world's greatest detective. So
yeah, I'd agree with that. I'm also like not one of those kind of Batman will win any situation kind of guys. I I like my Batman to have limits. So I like the idea that he can maybe survive slightly longer against Superman than you thought he could, but he's not winning. There's no way. Like,
yeah.
Give him a kryptonite ring. I don't care. He's still, that's going to help him a little bit, but it's not enough.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I don't know if I'm totally on board with you there, but I get what you mean with a limited Batman, and because that's the most interesting part of him is he is just a man. So making him this all powerful man just kind of turns into a dark Superman, and that doesn't make him very interesting.
Yeah, I think it's just the whole prep time thing. It's just whenever you get that, but if he had prep time, he can win any situation. And you think, well, yeah, but life doesn't always give you prep time. That's
yeah.
It's not how the world works. But he would have known. How would he have known? How can he be across everything? That's just, he's got limits.
It's not realistic.
Yeah. But I digress. This is your discussion, not mine. So you've been consuming a lot. You've been watching the animated series. So I also saw that a long time ago. Probably rewatched some of the episodes. I was gonna say not that long ago, but as in not when it first came out, but a few years ago. Yeah. What do you feel? Still stands up? Still holds up to modern day scrutiny?
Yeah, so that's kind of something I want to mention was that it really does, in my opinion. There are quite a few filler episodes, but even the filler episodes are just kind of like Batman has a villain and he's got to stop him, and that's just kind of like that's the filler of any like comic run as well. But there's some really good stuff in there. So I feel like. So I'm about halfway through season 4, or the new Batman Adventures. But I'd say the first bit of season 1 is really good. There are some really good episodes in there that I want to touch on. And then in the middle, there's some really good stuff in there, but it's mostly because season 1 has set up all his villains. Season 2 and 3 are just kind of him stopping them when they get out of Arkham. And then season 4 and the end of season 3 are also really good in kind of getting to some really interesting stories. I personally still think that I will hold to that that Batman is the best Batman, and that Joker is the best Joker. And that carries through Justice League and Justice League Unlimited, because everybody always references Justice League Unlimited when Batman holds the girl's hand. That is just, it is Batman, but also just in this series, I think he is the quintessential Batman. Yeah, so that's kind of what I think.
Yeah, I think you're right, because I definitely think it's like the only balance that gets hit perfectly kind of across all the different facets of Batman. He's yes, he's got the skills, the physical skills, he's got the detective skills, he's got and even the way he switches between Bruce Wayne and Batman is, I find with really great. With the live action portrayals, there are actors I were like, oh, he's got a good Bruce Wayne but a bad Batman, or vice versa.
Or vice
Batman's
versa.
Pretty good, but I don't really like his Bruce Wayne. And then you've got George Clooney, who just was terrible in both sides, but
and knows it.
Yeah, and knows it, like everyone else on the planet. So. But I think there's, especially when there's like a couple of scenes, if I recall correctly, where he's like in the Batcave and he's in full cowl, but he has to maybe make a phone call as Bruce Wayne. And
so he just changes his voice.
Everything changes, like the way he sort of holds himself, the way his mannerisms.
Yeah,
it's such a switch.
Yeah, it's really great. Just rewatching, it's fantastic, because you can immediately recognize the voice of Bruce Wayne and the voice of Batman, and like they're both him, which is crazy. Like if you gave someone who didn't know who Kevin Conroy was these two voices, they might think they're different people, because they are very different, but they're both their own voices. Because his Bruce Wayne's kind of like, oh hi, how's it going? And then his Batman's like, I've got to find what's his face or whatever, he changes his pitch and the way his inflection in his voice and everything. And it's just so perfect that like when you're watching the show, even like rewatching it, I'm like, yeah, if I was a cop there, I would never suspect him to be Batman. Just the way he holds himself and portrays himself, you just never make that connection. But something else that I want to mention too, which was interesting, is he gets better over the course of the series. So in the early episodes, he's early days Batman, but he has Robin every once in a while, and the excuse is that Robin's at college, so he's not there for quite a few of the episodes. But he has Dick Grayson Robin, and then by the end of the beginning of season 3, Batgirl shows up, and then she comes back at the end of season 3. But by the time you get to season 4, that's when you kind of have the fully fleshed out Bat family, because there's a time jump in there. But I've been noticing, especially in season 3, Batman gets better at fighting as he goes along. Because in early days, he will get like hit and possibly like knocked down by just a mugger, and then by the end of like season 3, he's like just not even thinking about it, taking out muggers, and just the only challenge are like actual supervillains. So I thought that was interesting as well, and I really appreciated it.
Yeah, I think there's like a lot of growth in the series, and even within, it's not just him, as you said. You see different members of the Bat family that sort of have their own little arcs that go somewhere and have consequence, and even the villains. You see, the relationships between certain villains, how they progress. I think you first. You meet Harvey Dent as Harvey Dent first of all, right? And then he becomes Two-Face. So it's like you get to see kind of all of that happen. I'm gonna have to go back and watch all of this now. So
if
there are no more podcasts for a while, people, you'll know why.
You really should. It's really fantastic, and something they did to make it kind of timeless too, which is really great, is the time period's a little weird. So this is kind of in the vein of like nowadays, like Legion does this, where a lot of things in the world are made to purposefully throw you off the scent as to what time it is, because the cars are all like 40s model cars, but they have like 60s model planes and helicopters and stuff, and then you get kind of a feel of like some things in the world are more 50s and some of them are more like 60s. So a lot of things just kind of play together to make this own, like it is its own world almost. Like it's almost like it's the 50s or 60s, but the world wars never happened. And it's really interesting. But what I want to say about Two-Face is Two-Face's first episode where he becomes Two-Face is fantastic. Like that, like some of the early episodes aren't great, but I think overall they're really good. And like even that episode, that 2-part episode, is one of my favorites. And I think this series did a really good job overall of just making iconic Batman things. Because like Harley was made for this show. Nora Fries was created as the background for Mr. Freeze. This show popularized the dual identity of Harvey Dent. Just like a lot of things that are like mainstream Batman now came from the series. And I think you can kind of see that they put a lot of attention into that.
Yeah, and I think again it's one of those things where people probably wouldn't know necessarily that that's the case. Do you know what I mean? Like, they see these characters now everywhere, and sort of like the idea that it's traced back. It's interesting though, because it seems like, because it happens quite a lot with it. It's like the whole I don't know if you know like the history behind the creation of She-Hulk, for example. That basically there was the Hulk TV series that was and they were, if they introduced characters there, then the studio owned the characters and not Marvel, and so because they'd been doing the Bionic Man, what's it called, is it not $1 Million Man, whatever it was, that one. Basically the $6 Million Man, I think that was what it was called. So they'd done that, and then they'd brought out the Bionic Woman, and that was becoming popular. And so the fear was, oh, they're just going to make, a She-Hulk, and they'll own that. So we'll make She-Hulk first, and that way, if they do it, like, they have to pay us because it's our Marvel.
Yeah,
character.
yeah.
And so quite often these characters get made, and then what they do with them later, that's like, up to them kind of thing. But quite often they just get made as a kind of, oh, we need to protect, names, we need to protect rights, or like, look at all the Spider-Man movies or Fantastic Four movies and things like that, where they were just, oh, we got to make this quickly because otherwise the studio gets the rights back, or so on and so forth. Whereas it seems that these characters were made with a little bit more love than that. Like, they really thought about what they wanted to do, and they made these characters, and then they passed across into the comics and things because they were compelling characters. Like you mentioned, Nora Fries, like Mr. Freeze had no story before that. He was just a villain in a suit. Like, that was it. And then you gave him this backstory, and suddenly, I mean, I'll argue that he's interesting. I personally not a huge Freeze fan. I'm take him or leave him.
He's alright. But like in the series, if you watch the Freeze episodes, because there's roughly one every season. If you watch like the story progress, like if you watch them back to back, there's this really interesting story for Mr. Freeze, which involves him thinking Nora's killed, and then she's back, and then she's unfrozen, and just like all of these things that create a really interesting arc overall for Mr. Freeze. Like I think there's 3 or 4 main Mr. Freeze episodes, and each of them just takes that story a little bit further. And I think that just kind of shows like they really did care about the characters, and so they wanted to take this to its logical conclusion, which in the end does end very sadly for Mr. Freeze. But he's a villain, so.
I think he even shows up in what I think we called Batman of the Future, and I think in America it was Batman Beyond. Did you ever see that?
Oh yeah.
Did you ever see that?
I haven't. That's why I'm rewatching. Yeah, because I'm planning on watching the whole animated universe, so I'm starting with Batman.
I have a feeling, if I'm not wrong, that like they managed to clone him in like a new body, and they can like transfer his consciousness into there, and it's sort of
at the end of season 4, he's just a head. So
yeah. So you find him as like a head, and they get him a body that can not doesn't need to be always at sub-zero temperatures, and so, and of course Bruce Wayne does not trust him, and it's a whole thing, but it's
he does pop up in Batman Beyond. I just looked it up.
Oh my,
it's called the episode's called Meltdown.
Well, yeah, because he starts to his body starts to revert back, like even this cloned body, it kind of it's the same thing. But I really liked that show as well, to be honest.
Yeah, I've heard really good things, and that's kind of why I'm working through this, because I grew up with Batman, Superman, and then a little bit of Justice League and Justice League Unlimited, and I loved it. So I wanted to watch through the whole thing and actually watch Beyond, because I've heard it's really good. And I don't remember. I forgot how many episodes I've forgotten from Batman, but they're so good. Like even just. There's fun episodes too. Like there's one where Batman gets captured in Arkham, and then his villains put him on trial, like in Arkham. And there's one where Joker, Two-Face, Penguin, Poison Ivy, and Killer Croc are all playing poker, and they're talking about their almost got him stories, which is like their stories about how they almost got Batman, like the closest they ever got. And it's just like fun, interesting stuff they did like that. Like each episode usually feels very different and interesting. And there's a lot of like characters in the background too that get big arcs. Like Rupert Thorne kind of has a really interesting arc. There's an episode with, I forgot his name. One of the other mob bosses though, and they're mob bosses that you don't hear about a lot, because nowadays it's like Falcone and Maroni and stuff like that. But even in the show, they picked people that you don't necessarily really know, and made really interesting stories with them. So
Yeah, and there's a lot of like just fun little scenes as well. Like you can,
yeah,
There's that classic one where he's like, I think he's like going for a filing cabinet or something in the room, and like one of the kind of henchmen just opens the door and looks in and sees him, and he just sort of gives him this look, and the guy just like closes the door and he's like, no one in there, and you just go, oh, that's great.
Yeah.
And in the Justice League Unlimited, the relationship he sort of has with Wonder Woman is
that's always fun. Like her trying to get him, and he's just like, nah.
That's so good. Like any of those episodes that kind of would come up, and I would.
Yeah,
man, we should just put the show on now. You can just listen to us watch it.
You've got it. Yeah, you really should. It's good stuff. And also, Alfred's always making quips, and it's amazing. He's so quippy in this show.
Yeah, well, that's Alfred. I mean, he's got to handle the stress somehow, hasn't he? What can he do?
Yeah.
So, I guess I should ask maybe, how did you get into it? Because the reason I'm asking this, I'll give a little bit of background here. Who was I speaking? I think I was on possibly somebody else's podcast now. I do not know where. Yeah, just remembered when I was talking this. It's not important, but it was explained to someone how was actually on an episode of Hoff Topics that should be coming out maybe on Monday. I'm not sure when you're listening to this. It might have been last Monday. Probably next Monday if you're listening to this. But basically, we were, I was talking how I grew up in a household where everybody loved sci-fi. So your Star Wars, your Star Trek, your Babylon 5 or whatever. Like I was, my grandparents loved sci-fi, my mum, and then it kind of got passed down to me. Nobody was into comics at all.
Yeah.
So I remember once sort of being called out by my grandmother on, why do you like Batman? Like, where did this come from? Kind of thing. And I don't know. Like nobody would have pushed me in that direction at all. But for some reason, here I am. So my question is then, how did you like come across this? How did you get into Batman? Was it through your family? Was it through friends? Was it because he was just there?
Well, I mean, he was always just kind of there because I grew up in dating. I'm making myself young, but I grew up in the early 2000s, so he was kind of everywhere. And like right as like teenage years were happening, was the Nolan trilogy. So I got in on the ground floor of that. And then, but even like as a kid, I was really into Batman, and that is purely due to my dad. A lot of my pop culture loves and love for film and everything I've gotten from him. Like classically, he used to paint a lot, and he used to really like painting the sea and like the big, I don't know what they're called, but like I guess galleons, like the big triple-masted ships with like 50 guns and everything, and because of that, the love for that, I adore seafaring movies like that. Like I have too much love for the Pirates of the Caribbean series purely because of that, like that love. So of like the sea and everything. So he really influenced a lot of my I don't know what I'm trying to say, but he influenced a lot of what I liked. And because of that, he showed me the animated series when I was growing up. Because I only really got into reading comics like recently. And by recently, I mean like within the last year. So I didn't get into Batman through comics. I got into him through the animated series, and then Justice League. And then there were a few other Batman shows that I watched a few episodes of. Like there was a 3D animated one called The Batman or Beware the Batman or something like that, which was all right. I didn't watch a bunch of it.
It didn't run for very long.
No, it didn't. for reasons. And it looked anyway. It's bad. Don't check that one out.
I've seen it. Actually, it wasn't as it looked bad. It was quite.
Yeah, that's what I was.
It was quite
say,
fine. Yeah. Although for some reason they decided to give him Katana as his sidekick instead of Like
oh yeah,
any
like
of the
instead
Bat
of any of
family,
the Robins.
Well, yeah, or even if it was that you wanted it to be a female character, that's fine. But give him Batgirl,
Like Batgirl's really
or
cool. Yeah.
give him Cassandra Cain. That would
Yeah,
have been
yeah.
another character that for a long time disappeared. Thank you, New 52, who was the
Yeah.
best Batgirl ever, and
Yeah.
got
Or you could even
wiped
yeah, you could even do like his modern ones. I forget what their names are, but they popped up in the beginning of Tom King's run. I'm trying to find where their origin is from. One of them's like a ninja girl and she wears like purple.
what? Not spoiler.
Yeah, spoiler. And there's another one.
Well,
They show up in the Monster Men
at
series.
the moment, you've got Orphan running around.
Orphan, yeah, that's
so
the one.
that's Cassandra Cain. That she was Batgirl, and then
Okay.
and then when they brought her back in, like New 52, she wasn't around at all, and then with the whole rebirth thing, they brought her in as Orphan, which is a horrible name.
Yeah,
I don't like it.
A little bit.
She was Batgirl. Leave it at that. And then she was Black Bat for a little while because she stopped being Batgirl. And she was the daughter of an assassin and Lady Shiva. And so that was really that's why she was so good. And she was actually like a better fighter than Batman. And that's actually what I really liked about all the Bat families. Like Tim Drake was smarter and arguably a better detective, but not as skilled physically. And like Dick Grayson was, but the most acrobatic because of his background, and also almost like everyone in the DC universe loves him. All the kind of Justice League, everybody looks up to him. He's so well liked, and he's such a good
he's the leader of the Young Justice, and
and then you had Cassandra Cain, who was a better fighter, but she lacked a lot of the social skills and things like that. So they all were kind of better than Batman in some area, but Batman was like almost as good as all of them in each of those areas. But then obviously they're much better than them in all the other areas, kind of thing. So they just you made sense why they were around. But again,
except Damien, he's just there because he's better at being angry.
Yeah, that's true. Well, there you go. He's better at being angry. So we've got something. Everyone's got something. But anyway, but you're right. That was another show. It was okay. There was the other one I think you mentioned, the Beware the Batman.
Yeah.
That also looked terrible, but was a kind of a guilty pleasure of mine. I avoided it for a long time, basically because of how the Joker looked. But then turned out it was
that
good.
the 2D animated one?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, that was the Batman. That so actually little story here.
The other one was Beware the Batman, and this was the Batman.
Beware the Batman was like the 3D one that looked terrible. And the other one. So this is kind of I mentioned this on. I think I mentioned it on Doug Represents. But this is kind of why the DC animated universe got canceled. Was because they wanted to move away from a universe that had so much history, which by the time of Justice League Unlimited, the DCAU did, because it had like 5-6 shows in it, all with like 3 seasons. So they were making the Batman, which was like kind of this new version where he has like all these new, like he's got like an updated version of the Batmobile where it's all like early 2000s basically. And they wanted to kind of like go in a very different direction, almost kind of like an Ultimate Universe version kind of thing. And so because of that, that's why Justice League Unlimited got canceled, was because they made the Batman show, which I watched a couple episodes of, and it's fine, I guess. I like the Joker being like, I don't like it as the Joker, but the Joker being super acrobatic and like a really crazy fighter was kind of fun for once. But yeah.
It was just that though. It was just fine. It wasn't really good.
Yeah, it was
really
kind of fun and
bad.
different.
It was just okay. Not good enough to cancel everything else. I was suddenly another thing had popped into my mind of another show, and of course. Then as I discovered talking to you, there was another show they were gonna make that never materialized. That was Gotham University. Was it called? What was that?
Oh yeah. Gotham University. Or Gotham High School or something.
Now if anyone is listening, Google it, try and find it. There are 2 images that exist, and that is it. That's all you can find.
There's a pilot episode that they made somewhere, but we don't have it.
It is somewhere locked
like
in
their
a vault
files.
that they will not
Yeah.
release. I scoured the internet looking for a clip. I would have been happy with a 10-second clip. There is nothing. Every YouTube video is just the same 2 images and then them talking about it. Oh,
Yeah.
very disappointing. But yeah,
You were so excited. That was the best part of that whole episode, was just when you discovered Penguin in that picture.
Yeah. Yeah, if you've Googled that, anybody, now you've probably looked, as I did, from like left to right at all the people. Look down, and Penguin's almost on the floor. He's tiny. You might miss him. So go back, have a second look. There he is. Yeah, so that's
fantastic.
Always enjoyable. So you were saying how you like grew up with these ones. So for me,
yeah,
I remember seeing, like, not that I was around at this time, but it was obviously repeated a lot, and I remember having on VHS taped off the TV the Adam West, Burt Ward, Batman and Robin, the movie, like the film, where you had the introduction,
the 66 movie,
where you had the introduction of the shark repellent bat spray and all of those kind of like classic things. And I remember seeing the show on TV. It was like on repeat, when I was little. So that was one of like the first introductions I had of Batman. Some of these cartoons as well at that time, and then just the movies, like the
Tim Burton movies,
the Michael Keaton ones. And then I remember like Batman Forever coming out. I think I remember going to the cinema to see Batman and Robin, and and probably like enjoying is not the right word, but just being like, it's more Batman, like yay,
kind
of thing. And imagine, like, I was such a big Batman fan. I had like anything Batman, and when Batman Begins was coming out, it was just around the time that I was moving, so it came out at the cinemas just as I left the country, and I didn't get to see it until it was like released on DVD, and I was able to go and get a copy. And like, I just saw it in a shop and I just went in and bought it. I'm like, I don't even need to see this to know if it's any good.
Yeah,
I've got
it's just Batman.
And I remember bringing it home, and I told my flatmate, I was like, I have found the movie we're going to watch tonight. Like, we're watching this.
Yeah.
And he told me, Batman's for kids. I'm not watching it.
What?
Right. Fair enough. I mean,
he's
whatever.
No longer your friend.
So, yeah, but he pays half the rent. So what can I do? So I was like, that's fine. So he was working, like, we had a massive living room and like a table at the back, and then the sofa was like in the middle and the TV. So I was like, well, I'm watching it. So I put it on, start watching it. He's working. He's doing some paperwork on like the table behind me. And it just starts the scene in the prison. And it's all of like a minute and a half in, and he has jumped over the sofa and he's now sitting watching it with me.
Because it's a great scene.
So we watch the whole movie. I go out the next day and come home to find him rewatching the whole film because he's watching it now in Italian, because so he spoke English very well, but he wanted to watch it in Italian. So he rewatches it all in Italian. His parents come to visit us a few months later, and he's like, Dad, I have got a movie you're going to like. And we watched it again for them. And every time I'm just like, you remember you told me this is for kids, right? Like, we shouldn't be watching this. Such a good, that's a great trilogy of movies that I just feel petered out. Like, started so good.
Yeah.
And then
I really wish he could have done the vision he had for 3 with using the Joker, because originally he had a big plan for the Joker in the 3rd movie, but obviously Heath Ledger tragically died, so that was sad.
Anyway, again, we digress, but
so
that was my experience. A little bit different. I would have liked to have been sort of growing up and getting to see those ones as I was sort of your age at the time. That would have been enjoyable.
Well, I didn't. None of them I never saw any of them in theaters. Because I was just a little young, according to my dad, especially my mom. My mom was like, no. But I remember watching Batman Begins, probably around 13. And I was freaked out by the worms when he like the worms crawl out of his face. That was freaky. But it's a great movie. But yeah, so that was kind of just my exposure. It was just the animated series and then the movies, and then just right around then Batman was super popular, so I just kind of liked Batman. One fun story is my dad, because he was an artist, he used to make really intricate piñatas for our birthdays, or for my birthdays. So he would actually take do you know what foam core is?
Probably not. No.
Okay.
I'm not very artistic at all. It's not like
foam core is like. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, no, you go for it.
Well, foam core is just like a material that is used sometimes for like I guess he works in a framing shop, so he makes frames, and I guess they use it for like the backing or whatever. But it's basically like two pieces of like plastic, and in between is like some foam, and it's like only about like that thick.
Right.
Anyway, but you would cut it with like an X-Acto knife, and essentially he would build around this balloon really intricate 3D like faces, right? And so for one of them, he made the Joker, and the Joker had like individual teeth and everything, and then he painted it, and like it was incredible. It was fantastic. I wish he still did it. I mean, it was a lot of work, but he did one for Darth Vader too. But it was awesome. It was fantastic, and to bash the Joker's face in is pretty great.
I mean, it all sounds wonderful. Like the work and effort he's done to make this, and how intricate it is, and all the little pieces. It's just sad that then you're smashing it to pieces. Like that's,
but it made for like some fantastic memories for me. It was amazing, and also like what was great is that year everybody wanted a piece of it to take home. So like some of us got a few teeth, and then one of my friends like grabbed the leftover head and just took off with it. So it's pretty great.
Explain that one to your mum when you get home. Like, what's this? Oh, just some teeth that Dante knocked out and he gave them to me. You're like, oh, okay, that's great, son. Okay, so normally I would I'd flip it over. I'd let you ask me questions, but I feel like I've already spoken far too much on this topic of Batman. Unless you had a particular question you needed to ask, but I feel like we've covered a lot.
Well, I was going to ask, what's your favorite interpretation? Because I've kind of made it clear that mine's probably the animated series, although Tom King's run is also very good. But what's your favorite iteration?
Yeah, I feel like you have to eliminate the comics, really, because
because they're all muddled.
Well, no, but I mean, just because I mean, I suppose even the way you read them will change the way they are, if that makes it. Like the portrayal of Batman, like when he's speaking to this guy, you're giving him the voice. The words are there, but you're doing the inflection. And is he being scary and sinister? Is he being sarcastic? Is he just being intimidating? Do you know what I mean? So I don't think you can count those, because also, like, you know, there are some fantastic runs in the comics. Don't get me wrong. I love them, but I was saying if you're talking about interpretation, I guess you need to be in a medium where you can hear the voice and see the way they move and so on and so forth. So definitely the animated series, I think, is the only one that really ticks all the boxes. And then I don't know, because like the Michael Keaton. So okay, definitely not Adam West, I suppose. He's he was, you know, he did what he needed to do at the time. Well done. Definitely he's above George Clooney, but George Clooney is I remember bottom of the list for me, no matter what. That's probably the only thing I remember. Like, I was saying that I didn't like hate that movie when I first saw it. Now I really can't watch it, but when I first saw it when I was younger, as much as I was like trying to be like, no, it's good, it's Batman, I still never liked George Clooney as Batman. I was like, he is not Batman. I much preferred Val Kilmer. I thought Val Kilmer was a pretty good Bruce Wayne, but not a great Batman. And then I think Christian Bale was good in Batman Begins, and I'm gonna put it there that I think he was a good Bruce Wayne. Like the party scene when he has to get everybody out of the house and he's just insulting them all, like brilliant. That was good. Yeah, and like the way he pretends to drink and he does all of those kind of things. So I think he's really good there, and he was a good like becoming Batman, like learning this, like a kind of an unrefined Batman. So he's got the building blocks of who he will become, but he's not there yet. Unfortunately, the next two films, he never got there. Like he started to get there, and then he went off a cliff. Like that's
despite the fact that that The Dark Knight is one of the best comic book movies ever. That is totally because of the Joker, not Batman.
Yeah, I mean,
and I will stand by that. But
yeah, it's a shame because it was getting there. Like you could see the progression and him like adjusting the suit, and a little bit of like detective skills were being used, and it's like, oh yeah, it's starting to come there. And then like by the third film, needs a leg brace. And you can't do it, and it's just like, oh no, this is not good. And then like the Ben Affleck one looks great. Like looks so good, and
when he fights he's good too.
Yeah, and his Batman is pretty good, and even his Bruce Wayne is pretty good. I feel with him it's probably similar to how I think Henry Cavill's like a really good Superman who's just never given anything good to do. So like if you give him a good movie, and I think like if you'd given Ben Affleck a really good script and a good story and had it a little bit lighter, he'd have been a really good Batman. But unfortunately, he wasn't. And so So
true.
So I probably think, as you do, that the Kevin Conroy is the gold standard at the moment. At the moment, I live in hope. Perpetual optimist here. I constantly live in hope. One day I'll get the call. They'll be like, Jason, we need you. Come and audition for this role. I'll be like, finally.
And you'll get it.
I'm in. And I'll get it. Yeah, I mean, why not? So I've run out of questions. I mean, I haven't, but time is not on my side, I should say. So I have some questions without context. I put the call out. You may have seen that I put the call out. Some of these questions may be yours, but we'll save them for somebody else. We'll just go with a couple because we've been speaking for a while. People are getting bored. So, a couple of questions for you. Are you ready? And I'm
so excited. I've been waiting for this.
Waiting all your life. Okay. So, we've mentioned him earlier, Rory Spence from Doghead Presents. He asks, and you're probably the right person to ask this question, if a tree falls in the woods and no one's around to hear it, why did Robbie Williams never crack America?
I think it's because he's just not good. No, I'm just kidding. I haven't actually listened.
That's probably why then, that nobody in America actually listened. There we go.
Yeah, that's the answer.
That's the answer. He's not good and nobody in America listened. So, Tyler Thornton? Yeah. He asked quite a tricky question. I'm intrigued to get your answer to this. If a rigid atom-thick blade sliced through you at the speed of light, would you get sliced in half and die, or just heal back together without noticing?
Ooh. It's only an atom thick?
It's only an atom thick, and it's moving at the speed of light.
Ooh.
But it is rigid.
I feel like... Yeah. Well, I feel like anything moving at the speed of light is gonna really hurt you. So, personally, I would feel... But the thing is, if it's only an atom thick, does it, like, break the bonds? Like, that's the question, I guess. Yeah. But I feel like if it's moving at the speed of light, it has the velocity to do that. So, I don't. You might not even fall into two pieces. You might just like be obliterated.
Yeah.
So
You might.
I mean, I guess we won't know until MythBusters. But
wow, are they going to try this one? Okay, good.
yeah.
Good to know. Will be a highly viewed episode. Yeah, I guess maybe you'll just realize at a certain point that things aren't connected anymore. So
Yeah.
you're like eating food, and that's just not going down to the stomach for some reason, and you don't know why. But
Maybe
maybe
it's like maybe it's like when you're if it's like right down the middle, maybe it like splits the two halves of your brain, and then weird stuff happens. Because this is another thing that I could talk about for a while, but basically weird stuff happens when you split the brain into two pieces.
No, you're kidding me. Weird stuff happens when you split someone's brain into two pieces. You heard it here first, people.
No, but like
another exclusive.
No, but like it's weird. It's weird because sorry, just really brief side tangent. When you do that, the other side of your brain almost has its own personality. So obviously one half of your brain controls your right half or your right hand, and the other one controls your left. And they would ask people to pick their favorite color, and each hand would pick a different color. And then because speech is only controlled by one side of the brain, they would try to explain it. But yeah, so weird stuff happens.
I'll take your word for it. I mean, we can do some experiments later, but for now, I'll take your word for it.
Yeah.
We'll just maybe finish up with... So I'll give you the option. Do you want a question from Phil Better or a question from Harry from the Rank List of Everything?
Ooh. I feel like they're both interesting questions.
There's a couple of questions here, so if you want, I'll give you one of each. I'll make life easier for you.
I'm sorry.
Okay. What is your favorite DC movie, and why is it Batman v Superman?
Because Batman v Superman is not as bad as people say. No, I'm just kidding. It's not that.
It just popped up on Netflix, so I was like rewatching it the other day.
Yeah, I have the extended cut that was given to me for my birthday because my parents weren't sure. They bought me two things and they weren't sure if I wanted it. And then they asked me, and I didn't, but I got it anyway. And I haven't watched it.
So what is your favorite DC movie? Let's push Batman v Superman away for a moment, even though we have agreed that Ben Affleck is an excellent Batman and Henry Cavill is an excellent Superman. But
I can definitively say it's Batman: Mask of the Phantasm because I watched that in rewatching the animated series for the first time, and it's as good as people say. So it is the best Batman movie.
Yeah, that's true. I hadn't taken into account the animated movies when I was trying to think of an answer there, but you are correct. I have also seen that movie, and I don't want to spoil anything for people that haven't seen it, but the person who is the Phantasm also appears in a sort of flashback episode epilogue of Batman Beyond, because maybe was involved in the creation of a new Batman. Who knows? So yeah, so it's all interconnected. I mean, I know, but who else knows? And I'll ask you this one from Harry then. If Squirrel Girl were to run for president of the US, by what margin would she win?
I think she'd probably get 97%. And the other 3% are rednecks that don't want Squirrel Girl. So,
well, this might have influenced that answer because there was a follow-up part which was, should squirrels be allowed to vote in this scenario?
Ooh.
Well, you're saying 7%
I mean,
without them. I feel like it's unnecessary at this point.
Yeah. I was gonna say no because they're biased, but everyone's biased, so maybe yeah. Oh. Give squirrels a vote.
Wow, you heard it here first, everybody. Another exclusive. Okay, well, thank you very much, Dante, for joining us today and putting out this episode. I mean, I know I gave you loads of notice, weeks of notice to prepare yourself, so that's that's good. So I don't know why. Thank
you for giving me the weeks of notice. I really needed it to buff up my Batman knowledge.
That's. I mean, I let you have enough time to rewatch the whole of the Batman animated series, so I think that's pretty kind on my part. So you've been on the show before, but since then you've even started a new podcast. So would you like to tell the dear people listening where they can hear more of you?
Yeah. So the new podcast Jason is referencing is Let's Get Contextual, where we talk about a movie, a TV show, a comic book, or a character. And Jason has been on that to graciously talk about Gotham, and probably on the future to talk about other things. And then there's Play D&D, which I referenced before in my last episode, where we take existing characters from movies and TV shows and use them in D&D. And Jason has also been on that one as Jason Todd. So definitely check that out. Yeah, I think that's it.
For now. That's it for now.
Yeah, it's weird when you've got some in production.
Yeah. Oh, spoilers. A little bit of sizzle for future projects maybe. And if you want to hear any more from me, I'm not sure why you would, but if you do, you can check out Getting to Know Who. Maybe new episodes of that will be coming soon. Maybe it's getting difficult to organize everything. Or since part of the reason why these episodes have been delayed is because I was preparing my new show, which is called All Across Fitness. That is also going to be available in the links below. You'll be able to find that. But it's not just audio. You can actually see videos. So it's on YouTube as well. So if you're just curious about what I look like or how ridiculous I am when I'm trying to do these interviews in person, you can head across there. And again, links will all be down below. Or just go to jasoncroxon.co.uk and you can find links to everything there as well. And of course, you can find me also on Twitter and Instagram, and all of those good things will just be in the notes because you're probably doing something right now. Your hands are busy, so you can come back to it later and just look in the notes and you'll find it there. And if I'm kind, I might include some links to some of Dante's stuff as well, but who knows. Oh. So thank you very much for listening, and hopefully you'll join me again next week when there definitely will be another episode up with another guest. The 1 week that I missed, it really hurt me. I felt like I'd lost a personal battle there. So let's make sure that doesn't happen again, everybody. And until then, enjoy the rest of your week, and I'll see you next week. Goodbye. Well, he's got a new guest, time to put him to the test. So what's the topic? We don't know, cause he never does research for this show. His name is Jason, he wants to talk to you about a topic you love or something you do. No two topics are ever the same. That might sound impressive, but they're all pretty lame. A conversation with